A woman who works for the NHL is on thin ice with Threads after posting some accusations against a romance author on her TikTok. Let's talk about why. My name is Taylor Rose, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about everything reading and writing. So here we have Piper Shaw. You can see she's currently a broadcaster for the Seattle Krakens, an NHL hockey team. And recently she's kind of come under fire for a TikTok she posted. So you can see that on a previous video, someone commented to Piper saying, "Hey Piper, Power Play by Chelsea Curto is a play about you." Obviously, making a joke off the word play, since she's a sports broadcaster, blah, blah, blah. And here is what Piper had to say about that.
I have been aware of this hockey romance novel about me for many, many months now. I obviously have a management team and lawyers because I am a professional broadcaster. I've been made aware of what my options are, and I have many thoughts about this. And
so the author in question is Chelsea Curto. She seems to be a pretty popular sports romance author. Here is one of her Instagram ads for Power Play, which is the novel in question. And you can see the main characters are Piper and Liam. To note that in the book, her name is Piper Mitchell, and the real life person is Piper Shaw. So, I mean, that is one significant difference. And the description doesn't seem to really be referential at all to Piper Shaw, the person, at all.
I'm going to try to keep it brief, but to begin, I think it's important to disclose that, I don't read hockey romance. And I know that for other people, it's, a fantasy, an escape, and that's great for you. I don't judge, but this is my life. It's not a fantasy. It's the thing that I actually went to college for and have worked my entire life for, and the thing that also pays my bills and keeps a roof over my head. And so I would never be interested in that to begin with personally, but that is neither here nor there.
So at least when I looked at the video, there was a mix of people for and against her. So it doesn't seem to have changed since then, but here's a commenter expressing disappointment. I didn't know this book was based on a real person. That's not okay. And Piper did come back and say, "And for the record, I've been with my husband for 13 years since we were teenagers, and it's documented all over on my channels. And he also works in the broadcast industry and has played hockey his entire life. And I absolutely couldn't survive this lifestyle without him and how much he tolerates, sacrifices, and manages so I can do what I love." And as you can imagine, this whole thing has made him feel sick too. There are more comments supporting her saying, "Wow, this is absolutely crazy." And Piper does point out that the book credits the female coach of the team that Piper works for in the acknowledgments. But some people, such as these two, think that it's a stretch to assume that the book is about her based off of being blonde and blue-eyed named Piper. So one thing that a lot of people bring up is that the series that this character is in, The DC Stars by Chelsea Curto, was originally published in 2024. So the first book, Face Off, was published in May of that year, in which Piper Mitchell was a side character, and Power Play, in which Piper Mitchell is the main character, was published in October of that year. So they were published in the same year. So here is the author's note in the book. On the second page of the author's note, you can see here in this paragraph, it talks about the Kraken hiring Jessica Campbell. So that is the female coach for the Kraken that became such a big deal. I will note that according to Google, she was hired in July 2024. So that's after the first book and before the second book. A lot of posts that I've seen, I think, are conflating Campbell's hiring with Shaw's hiring, which is not true. You can see on this post from Piper Shaw's Instagram that she was actually hired in 2021. So in this post, she talks about where her career has been going, and she describes her job as, "I can finally tell y'all that I am working for the team in Seattle. I've joined Root Sports Network and the Seattle Kraken to cover the Seattle Kraken in many capacities. You'll see me hosting and reporting in pre/post games, at the rink, on socials, and on my own weekly show, Inside Kraken Hockey, and even on the road with the team. Jake and I moved to Seattle in July after almost an entire year of chats, Zooms, interviews, and auditions with West Coast folks. Hardest secret I've had to keep in my life. But you can see that this was posted September 30th, 2021. So that is significantly before the books probably were even written. Wikipedia corroborates this and says that Piper Shaw has been the on-rink reporter since 2021. So she has been heavily associated with the team in their media, visible during the games. She's the person mostly talking to you about the team, it seems, at least when the games are ongoing. I do think it's kind of a stretch, if the author, Chelsea Curto, was really following Jessica Campbell's hiring so much and is a hockey fan herself, I do kind of find it hard to believe that she has never at least seen Piper Shaw, whether or not she remembers that. I think it's very possible, it happens all the time. You see something and then years later, you come up with an idea that you think is totally unique and not at all tied to anything in reality. And then someone will point something out and you're like, oh yeah, I did actually read that series when I was 12. Connecting all the train stops in your brain.
I find this entire book just incredibly regressive, frankly. The narrative, I don't know, I cannot understand why, as people who claim to love hockey, and allegedly, I would assume, like, as women, don't we want to grow this sport and grow the place for women in this sport, and particularly in the men's game? And if that is your position, I cannot wrap my mind around any decent reason that we would decide it's a good idea to continue to peddle these kinds of narratives, that women who are allowed in these traditionally extremely gate-kept spaces, why would we peddle a narrative that reinforces all of the reasons that people think that women don't belong here? And keep in mind, I work in a position that is one of the few positions that women have even really been traditionally allowed in for the last 20 years, frankly. We're seeing more and more women in the last five years. Let's not forget about the milestones that women in hockey have just been encountering. Why would we do this?
Many people were upset that Piper Shaw even posted the video to begin with. You can see this post here by Maddie's Next Chapter, where she says, "You would hope that a female hockey broadcaster who is concerned with an author who is also an incredible advocate for women in sports, using her name, image, and likeness in a character, would privately message said author first, rather than blasting her publicly, deleting comments that support her, then blocking those commenters. Disappointing." And XOXO Love Ivory responded, "Girl, stay disappointed." Sorry. Because she literally said she was in contact with people behind the scenes, etc. She only made a video because people wouldn't shut the F up about it, and she got annoyed. You can see how annoyed she was. Instead of getting upset at her for voicing her feelings, be upset at the author who caused her this situation. This message is a little confusing. Initially, it comes off that they're against Shaw, but then it sounds like they're coming to support Shaw. Im Boyles one said, "I cannot believe they're defending her. Imagine working all your life as a politician for some author to come take your name, likeness, and job and write a story about a romance with the president. And she should be okay with it? F no. Men have been saying for ages women don't belong, and they're trying to prove them right." And I understand this because a lot of people don't like seeing their career in fiction more specifically associated with certain tropes, like professors not liking student-professor romances, for example. That sort of thing, when there is an inherent power balance probably involved.
And then on top of it, I cannot wrap my mind around why any professional author would think it's an okay or acceptable idea to name a character after an active working professional in that specific job. And not only is this main character my name, the cover art looks exactly like me and my job, but you couldn't make her brunette. You couldn't make her a redhead, make her not white. I can't understand how that is a good, how you connect those two dots. But it also tells me that there's basically two options here. There's only 32 teams in the National Hockey League. There's only 32 team reporters in the National Hockey League. Not all of us are women. And there is only one named Piper. And it's a pretty unique name. So either The author did not do her due diligence and just like a basic fact check of 32 teams. And, like, that's okay. If you didn't do that, then you're just like insanely lazy for like an author. Like, I can't, like, I'm a journalist. Like, what? Why would you not do that? That's crazy. Or she did and it was a choice, which is even worse. But either way.
So we open on a book posted. Claiming someone is using your image and likeness when you're a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman is interesting because, not to sound mean, but LOL, what? Isn't that like the most common description used for Western women, like the beauty standard by mediocre men? Be so for real right now. Imagine thinking a book is about you because, and I quote, the art looks like me and she has the same name, when the name in question is always in the top 100 common girl baby names every year. I kind of see where they're coming from. Blue-eyed blonde definitely is a thing, but I do think the reason that Shaw is so upset about this is because fans, random people, are coming to her and sending her messages about this. So it's not like she stumbled across the book and came up with this accusation on her own. A Sandra K77 did come, kind of to give a Piper benefit of a doubt. I've met many blonde-haired, blue-eyed women who do not also have delicate features, a 10-year marriage to their high school sweetheart, and an incredibly specific job held by less than 32 people in the country. Even if it was somehow totally unintentional on the author's part, there was a research failure. There's enough resemblance that people in her personal life had questions. Let's not pretend this is anything like the white girl main character syndrome. And I think that's kind of a key point, this hyper specific job. If the character had been probably anything else, a high school football coach, small town reporter who falls in love with local football player on like a hobby team or something, like those scenarios could cover probably hundreds of thousands of people in America. One thing I think to point out is that a lot of people are saying the name Piper has been in the top 100 since 2000, which is demonstrably false. If you go to babycenter.com, they provide little charts based off of the Social Security Administration data, which shows that Piper didn't hit the top 100 until 2010. It remained, initially pretty low, spikes up, and then comes back down around 2020, and has since just been declining. So if we look at Piper Shaw's age, an article from last year said she was 28, so she would have been born in the late 90s. Piper was not a popular name in the late 90s. So I don't blame her for saying my name's not popular, because unless she's around really young people, 15-year-olds maybe, she'd probably not run into a lot of people with her name. At the time, it was number 982 in popularity. Before that, it had never broken the top 1,000 names in America. So that was approximately 105 Pipers born per 1 million children in 1997, assuming that's her birth year, around that time. Versus, for example, and I'm basing this off of my own experience. My name is Taylor, obviously. When I was born and named Taylor, Taylor was extremely popular. It peaked around 1990. I was born shortly thereafter. There were tons of Taylors. I went to school with at least 12 Taylors. One of my high school math classes, there was a Taylor in front of me, 2 Taylors behind me. Like, I could not escape the name Taylor. So in my head, I feel like Taylor is a popular name because I spent the majority of my life, all of my formative years, lamenting the fact that there were a dozen Taylors in my small town. But as I have grown up and Taylor has plummeted in popularity back to when, kind of the opposite of the name Piper's life journey, now I have never met a child named Taylor. And I just go to point that out because Piper is not nearly as popular as a lot of these comments are saying it is. Like, yeah, it hit a peak, but it's on the downturn, and it certainly wasn't popular through Shaw's childhood, my childhood.
It's harmful, frankly, and I think it's tired, and it's really, really annoying. And you know, I have coworkers who have been like, I would have sued the moment that I found out about this. And it's so hard for me because I believe in supporting women and their work and their creative work. But apparently that is not what we're all after. And I could speak on this for a while, but I don't need to. I don't owe this a second of my breath. Frankly, I think that there should be some gratitude that this book is still on the shelves as of now. And I'm aware that there's a play about me.
You can see here on this post from Romantically Inclined that kind of sums up a lot of people's objections. They said, guys, please make sure that before you write a romance book, you check that your heroine doesn't share a first name with anyone in her fictional profession. Check all records ever made. Know the littlest people from mid-sized franchises. Check death records. Double check your fictional character and her fictional profession doesn't share a fictional name with any person who has ever existed, ever. And make sure their hair color isn't the same either. Shaw has since come out with another video where she goes over a text conversation that she had with the author, Chelsea Curto, and apparently they are working something out, coming to an agreement, which a lot of people were upset that she even posted the video, like, why are you posting a private conversation that you had with Curto? And then Shaw had to come out and be like, hey, I asked permission before I did this. Last year, there was a pretty big scandal about celebrity fanfiction being published, specifically with a novel called Roughing the Princess, which was Taylor Swift fanfiction, essentially. The blurb is literally everything we learned as it was happening when Taylor and Travis's relationship came out. The main characters have the same initials. Like, it's really obvious. The art... It's really clear that it was kind of a one-to-one depiction of what this person thought Taylor Swift's sex life is, and they just replaced the names. A lot of people were really upset when this book came out. Obviously, that's kind of a line to cross. A more recent scandal is a Hozier-inspired novel, which, again, is basically about Hozier falling in love with what most people seem to think is like a self-insert. The author of that particular novel had advertised it as being about Hozier for quite a while. And a lot of people don't like that either, especially because Hozier has apparently been pretty vocal about how he doesn't like stuff like that because he's been in a long-term relationship. Overall, people really don't like celebrity fanfiction, it seems. At least when it crosses over from just being fan fiction to being a published novel for sale. Like, I know there's tons of fan fiction for bands. One Direction is like a really popular choice. Or maybe it was just me. You heard about it on Tumblr all the time. I wouldn't say it's the existence of this fan fiction that's the issue. It's monetizing it and then trying to like gaslight people that that's not what it is. So I will say, you know, at least in this scenario, Piper Shaw isn't like a celebrity the same way Taylor Swift or Hozier or One Direction, who all happen to be musicians. Overall, pretty interesting. I think if this had been any other field, if it had been a different sport, probably nothing like this would have happened. Do I personally think that it was intentional and that Chelsea Curto has some sort of weird obsession with Piper Shaw enough to write a fanfiction book about her? Certainly no. Do I think people are harping on Shaw a little too hard with information that isn't actually correct? A little bit. If hearing the name The Kraken combined with book community stuff is ringing a bell for you, that is probably because of a scandal from last year that happened. People were drooling all over hockey players on Book Talk, particularly one guy from the Kraken. And so the team did a collab with a book talker who kind of took things a little far, kind of like graphic dance movements and comments and stuff, to eventually they stopped collaborating. And it seems like the Kraken deleted all of their videos having to do with this topic and asked people like, hey, this is a real guy who's married. Like, at first it was funny, but it's crossed a line. Some people think that that was like underhanded of the team to kind of like pull the rug out from under this influencer, but they do agree that the influencer kind of started ramping it up. So that incident was the subject of a lot of conversations around book talk, crossing lines with normal people. Hockey romance seems to be one of the more volatile sports romances out there. I don't know. I'm not a hockey fan. My family lives in a city with a hockey team, and they go to the hockey games all the time for that team, and they've all become obsessed with it. And so just from like listening to them talk about stuff, like it seems like hockey is a really small community. While I don't think Chelsea Curto did anything wrong necessarily, it just does go to show that when you are talking about a really specific field or a small group, you should probably look more into it than you would if your main character is just an elementary school teacher. Something that is widespread. A lot of people have experience with it. A lot of people do that job or live that life. So there's a lower chance of something like this happening. Well, that's all for now. I will see you next time.